Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome to another edition of Crisis Corner. This is Freedom Faction, and we're going to be going over the idea that Earth is being terraformed. Now, I initially wanted to name this as Terraforming the Earth for Satan, with the connotations that I was attacking it from a religious and a scientific point of view. However, I feel like that is something that requires later detail. What I'm going to go into as far as this one, as I said, is the idea that we are being terraformed, is the idea that we have been constantly and actively engaged within modern history, and that you can check as well, with aliens, with extraterrestrials, with creatures of a different space, or at least of a different genetic makeup, and how that all ties into what's happening now and how there's all kinds of different crazy things going on. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to throw out at first a timeline so you guys can understand where there's been historical evidence of interactions between humans and extraterrestrials, and I'm going to do this all without touching Roswell. So let's get right into it, guys. Let's go. It is claimed that in 1909, the U.S. cavalry were chasing a group of Mexican bandits out in New Mexico, and that they were able to trace them to a cave where they discovered what could only be called a horseshoe-shaped style craft, or ship. Now, the Mexican bandits that they had traced into the actual cave were nowhere to be found. They were scattered or assumed dead. But what they also found in that cave were quote-unquote gray demons. And I'm going to be showing you guys lots of examples of how throughout history there have been examples of these gray demons, these creatures, these otherworldly entities that we're involved with. I have another case for you. It's the Louisiana Booger, or the Booger, whichever one you prefer. And it goes a little bit like this. After the night got darker, a bright light suddenly appeared directly over the trail as the wagon approached a bend in the road. The light was no more than 20 feet in front of the mule. The mule, struck with terror, stopped cold in his tracks, and the farmer was stunned into silence. He remembered that he had just sat completely still as his hands gripped the reins tighter and tighter. He described the light as glowing and pulsating, and said it had positioned itself of only 5 feet above the mule's head and then became motionless except for the pulsating light. The farmer, overcome with fear, felt a cold paralysis cover his body. Next, the sweat poured down his forehead, and the hair on his neck and head seemed to stand on its head and neck, and it tingled. He couldn't break loose from whatever had him in its grip. He couldn't even move. And as he told it later, he felt an eerie light was drawing his body and soul to its center of energy. Unable to escape and glued to his seat of the wagon for what seemed like forever, he feared he was going to be totally consumed by the light. Finally, he was somehow released from the power of the light, and he immediately jerked forward and snapped the reins and shouted at the mule, "Get up, mule! Move! Get gone from here!" But he could not. The mule would not move an inch. It seemed frozen in its tracks, and neither shouts nor the reins could make it budge. The farmer said that the light changed its intensity, and at times it would glow with a brilliant white light, and at times it was shining with a warmer golden tone. It illuminated the 70-foot pine trees against the night sky. The light also lit the trail for several yards in front of and behind the wagon. Then, as quickly as it had first appeared, the huge light flickered and shot off into the distance. For several moments, the farmer sat there trying to gather his thoughts. He tried to understand what he had seen and experienced, but he couldn't think of a rational explanation. Then, suddenly, the mule sprang to life and tugged at the harness, jerking the wagon down from the road before the farmer's eyes could adjust to the natural darkness of the light. Since he could not see so well, he had to trust the mule's instincts. He just wanted to get away from wherever he had been stopped by the light. He thought any place would be better than that. The mule pulled the wagon to the end of the narrow road, and the farmer turned him left on an old Choctaw road and headed home. He repeatedly looked behind, to him and to the sides, afraid that the light would reappear. But it was not long before he saw the glow of a coal oil lamp in the window of his home, welcoming him. He never saw that booger again. So this is a tale that happens in 1923. Moving forward a little bit into the 1930s area, we start to hear tales of underground civilizations, underground bases being built. Now I want you to take a look at this article. It's from the LA Times in 1934. January 29th, 1934, just to be precise. Lizard People's Catacombs. City haunted. Not haunted, but hunted. That means they're actually going down there to actually look for these people's civilization. The engineer has sunken shafts under Fort Moore Hill to find maze of tunnels and priceless treasures of legendary inhabitants. What they're pretty much trying to tell you is that they believe that there is an underground civilization underneath Los Angeles. And if you think of all the sleazy managers, all the people that are walking around there, all the fake people, the plastic people, well, you could see how there would be a city underneath full of horrendous otherworldly creatures. This is in 1934. Okay, so let's jump forward to theoretical 1937, theoretical 1938. This is whenever Phil Schneider, God rest his soul, actually starts telling us that the construction of DUMBs, deep underground military bases, start to become constructed, that they're being built, that they're being put all over the place, all over the country. And to his knowledge, that there's actually 131, and I'll get into that idea later. But the idea for the timeline is that there is still construction, still interaction with these entities. Before, as I mentioned earlier, there were already pre-existing caverns there with civilizations inhabiting them. For us to come down with the army and engineers and to do these types of geographical changes within, our Earth, to do these types of things, there was already something there. We just essentially added on to it. So this creates conflict, obviously. We're essentially drilling into someone's home and trying to make it our own, just putting a new human spin on there. So what I'm trying to get at is the idea that there is already an alien presence here, or at least a terrestrial presence, as us being the aliens in this sense, here on the planet. But for the timeline's sake, let's move on. So now we are entering World War II area, 1939 to 1945. This is why we see the construction of underground bunkers. This is why we see the advancement of technology. This is why we see all kinds of different things expanding. And as I've said, there are still interactions with alien presences here. Hitler and Werner von Braun have actually come out and said that no, they've had help. The technology, the advances that they've had was not their own. And you can actually see we went from horse and buggy to the AK, and that's crazy. Where do you think this help comes from? And what's even more wild is whenever you start thinking about it, all the things that led up to World War II and after World War II, what did we start doing? We started still advancing technology, still advancing sciences, and what did we do with it? We started making things such as the atomic bomb and nuclear bomb. That's whenever it gets wild. So naturally, if any kind of conscious species were able to see this on a global or intergalactic scale, they would think, hey, what are these explosions going off? on this little planet over here. Before they weren't doing this stuff, what's going on? They seem like they've had a quote-unquote accelerated growth. Around this time, around the 1950s, towards the end of World War II, is whenever we started hearing more and more things such as the Space Brothers, the Nordics, and the Venusians, and all these other things. This is where we get tales of the Vril from Hitler's society, from Hitler's campaign. And what's even more strange is we hear about how Nazis have quote-unquote escaped to the moon, and how we hear a lot of different fantastical tales. But what's so ironic about the fact that they had these tales of friendly, beautiful, blonde-haired, etc., human-looking aliens coming here to offer peace post all this chaos after we started to discover all the atomic materials and all these other destructive things for our society, is that once these people came, we started having more and more interactions with these otherworldly entities. And the reason I say that is because they came down here in a plea to try to help us. They were told, or we were told, that, hey, by doing this, you're destroying your magnetosphere, you're destroying your ozone, you're essentially putting holes in Mother Earth, you're destroying the life force, thus disrupting your spatial-time reference. We're here to try to help you with that. You guys need to disarm your nukes. You need to disarm your weapons. And I'm not sure if that was a play for early New World Order back then, but that's kind of what was going on, is the fact that they were trying to come in peace. But what's even more strange is 4 years later, in 1954, we have the Eisenhower Gray Treaty.
Unsealed case file. The Greada Treaty. Washington, D.C., 1954. President Eisenhower enlists the help of a top-secret UFO investigation committee called the Majestic 12 to send a binary message into space with the intention of communicating with aliens. The message is allegedly received by an alien race called the Greys. Gray-skinned, black-eyed humanoids from a planet in the Zeta Reticuli star system, some 39 light-years away from Earth. Their initial response is positive, and a series of secret meetings is arranged on Earth. The result of this historic summit is an agreement known as the Greada Treaty.
There was some sort of treaty that was signed whereby they could take some humans for abduction, experimentation, but they had to be returned safely. In exchange, the Greys would give us some technology. We do know that there was this sort of quantum leap in technology during that time, where we went from just having tubes to solid state to fiber optics and night vision in literally 20 years' time.
Did President Eisenhower and the CIA make a dire mistake by allowing alien Greys to abduct humans? And how far did the Greys go with their experiments? One of the earliest studies conducted on the subject of alien abductees revealed thousands of victims in the United States. A study done in 2011 on U.S. missing persons reports a staggering 700,000 Americans have simply vanished with no explanation. Is it possible the Greys have been probing our weaknesses to one day exploit them on the battlefield? The U.S. government may have made a deal with a hostile alien species, but not every American leader turned a blind eye to the dangers of secret dealings with aliens and the possibility of invasion. In a 1962 speech, General Douglas MacArthur openly addresses the concept of an alien war.
We deal now not with things of this world alone. We speak in strange terms of harnessing the cosmic energy of ultimate conflict between the united human race and the sinister forces of some other planetary galaxy.
Sorry I'm not as sensational as CW. That was actually from the show Unsealed Case Files. They actually has some really great stuff in there. I mean, obviously they're not telling you the full truth. I recommend you guys go look for the actual facts and details yourself. But jumping back into it. So that was taking place, like I said, back in the 1950s. Moving forward to 1961, for the timeline's sake, 1961 is when we started hearing about Betty and Barney Hill, the iconic case of two people, an interracial couple in the 60s that were abducted. Now think about that. That's an interracial couple talking about aliens. And I'm not trying to be super racist or whatever, you know, that's definitely not where I'm going with this. But the point I'm trying to make is think about how much attention that's going to bring to the idea of a society being somewhat infiltrated or in constant communication with an otherworldly force. A small fact that's actually not known about the Betty and Barney Hill case: we always hear about how Betty is familiar with star maps and, you know, having eggs taken and skin samples, but we didn't really hear so much about Barney and how he had sperm taken from him. And the reason why that wasn't taught so much is because that would lend credibility to the idea of the typical alien abduction scenario, where they take sperm, eggs, ova, and, you know, they get everything they need: blood, hair, skin samples, etc., to essentially reproduce a human being through these artificial means. And I'll get into that later. But with this one case, as you can tell, with the timeline's sake, we're still interacting with these creatures. So fast forwarded about another 9 years or so, and then well off into the future from here on out, we hear more and more about cattle mutilations. Dr. Linda Moulton Howe is a prominent researcher where we hear her talking about all how precise the actual incisions on these animals are, how they're getting precise objects, how they're getting specific organs, how they're leaving all the other parts of the body intact. But the surgical precision it's better than a doctor. It's like that of a laser. They're able to do it without tearing all the other skin around everything else, leaving everything else intact, but essentially just harvesting certain organs. And the reason why we hear it from mostly cows, and there's a reason behind this, is if you look at it, think about what's happening right now. Okay, we hear from Dr. David Jacobs, Dr. Bud Hopkins around this time as well, about how there's essentially a rise in all these abductions. That's whenever we hear things like regressive therapy or regressive hypnosis, regressive therapy, etc. And what goes on from here and how this connects is the cattle mutilations is, like I said, fast forward about 40 years to where we are presently in this day, in the 2010s. Moving on, we're in 2016 right now. We have things such as cows being able to be grown inside, or humans being able to be grown inside of cows. You know, spider pigs, spider goats, all kinds of different things, genetic test tube babies. And where do you think they had to get these samples from? Where do you think they had to get these objects or these instruments or these products from? The material, the merchandise, as mentioned in X-Files. This goes back to the 1954 Greada Treaty. Okay, it's the idea that in trade, and they didn't cover this in the video, in trade of humans, we were actually given better scientific equipment, better advances for information. That's why we were able to go from essentially carbon usage to electric usage, pretty much Nikola Tesla's research being made manifest. And I think there's a reason for this, but the reason why I'm going all over the place with this and how this connects to cattle mutilations is back then, this is what was happening. It was foreign to them. This is now, okay, the elite have been 30 to 40 or 50 years in advance. That's why we're just now seeing things such as transhumanism. We're seeing the iPad whenever that was mentioned in Star Trek before. There have been all kinds of different inclinations, or at least insights into the future, where they're able to tell us what they're planning. And so to get back to the timeline in the 70s, where we have things such as cattle mutilation happening, and the harvesting of organs, sperm, ova, and essentially materials to create a hybrid or a human-animal hybrid, quote unquote, that's a reality. And what's even wilder is whenever you go back to check this information, they were doing this now, okay? And because of the cloning rights and the animal rights, because it's both a human and an animal, it doesn't necessarily have the rights of either. So it's in that legal gray area to where they're able to do these things. And because we haven't openly asked for a debate as far as what these human-animal hybrids are able to do, they're free range, okay? And this has been going on for 30 to 40 plus years, okay? This is way before I was born. Way before I was born. And so I'm just trying to get this out there so we can understand the factual basis. Now, so in 1979, that's whenever we actually start to hear about the Dulce Wars and how there's different factions of alien groups having essentially a all-out war underneath us in all these underground bases and underneath all these underground tunnels, all these underground civilizations, and essentially that there is a breakaway civilization living underneath us. Now, Phil Schneider actually talks about his encounters with some of these extraterrestrial beings and what happens.
Now, another thing I want to reach to you is that during the unbelievable part, I was involved in building another base inside of Dulce, New Mexico, which is Los Alamos Laboratory. It's a biological laboratory. On the southwest part of the Archuleta Mesa, we built an underground facility, a better part of 3 cubic miles hollowed out underground. Then to the southwest of that, we were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2.5 miles under the surface. Number of the original wells or drilling machines that were used were at the rate of up 2 miles a day. It was fairly rapid. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down and we wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. Well, to our total surprise, first of all, the government knew all about it. They didn't tell anybody. When I saw Green Beret and Black Beret people encamped inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. The gig was up. First of all, I knew all about the alien agenda. I'll explain that in a few minutes. The large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. Had been one of their internal bases. And we'd drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as the first hole was sunk, and all this soot came up, and well, that's when all the hell broke loose, really. All started. Anyway, after we drilled all 4 holes, it took about 2 days to drill all 4 of them. And when you build an underground base, you drill 4 basic holes, and then you build called stopes or cross-member holes across, and then you use blasting equipment, special blasting equipment by the analyzation of the rock formation, and you literally blast out or tunnel out or deflagrate or melt rock out to build the large rooms that are required for this underground base. Well, in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The person the entity was absolutely horrible. I didn't waste any time. I reached for my pistol. At that time, as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the Folderol of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and all the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a little Walther PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. This was in late August of 1979. Now, you got a regular suit of clothes, you got a regular clothes on, plus you're in almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal, and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish, and burnt my fingers right off of me. And it was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt, burned all my toenails off of me, completely crispy crittered my left foot, burnt the shoe right off of me. All I remember is the smoking remains, and I'm still conscious, but in and out of, I didn't remember much. And there was a Green Beret that was right behind me that risked his life. In fact, he died. But he risked his life. He shoved me back in the basket and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today if it wasn't for him. So I'm forever indebted. He lost his life. 66 Secret Service agents, Green Berets, Black Berets, crack troops lost their lives because the government, our United States government, lied, did not tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious. It's been going on since that time. Since late August of 1979, our military, the Russian military, basically the militaries of the world, have been in constant conflict with the outer space alien. The small gray, the large gray, the reptilians, the whole thing. There are 11 distinct races of aliens. 2 are benevolent. 1 had to leave here in a hurry because their world is under attack, both on the surface as well as underground. There, the Pleiadians. They're familiar. Maybe some of you are familiar with that. Would some of you raise your hands who've heard of Billy Meyer and some of the, very good, about half the group. Well, Billy Meyer is one of these lucky people that they figured, well, he's kind of a simple type, we'll show him everything. Well, these are the benevolent aliens, and they've been here helping us. In fact, I have a picture, let me reach for it here. I have a picture of one of the aliens been working for the United States Pentagon for the last 58 years. His name is Valiant Thor. He's right here. There's my father in the background. This whole place, the ready room of the USS Eldridge, Al Bielek has probably explained, or maybe even shown you this picture. There's a list of some of the notable people in it. They're all the atomic bomb scientists of the day, all the time variant experimentalists of the day, all the top physicists of that particular day. This was in August of 1943. Now this guy has not changed one iota in 58 years. Started work, he came here, crashed here or whatever, whether he's under duress or not. He started work for our U.S. Navy and military operations in 1937, either 37 or 38 is what I've been told. So it's for 58 years, this man's been employed, probably under duress. If you don't do as we say, we're just going to use you for alien bait or something, I don't know. But anyway, he basically hasn't changed. He lives for 490 years, is what he says his lifespan is. Now, he's supposedly a semi-benevolent, he's a human-looking type person. He has 6 fingers and 6 toes, and he's got one oversized heart, 1 lung, giant lung. His blood vessels are bigger. He's got copper oxide for blood, similar to an octopus. His brain capacity, 300 centimeters greater than ours. He has a thinking capacity, IQ, if you were to measure it, be totally off the scale, be about a 1200 IQ. He speaks 100 languages fluently, alien as well as others. He's a remarkable person. I had a chance to meet him one time.
So as you said, this was all taking place in the year of 1979, in August, the summer of 1979. And the idea behind this is 20 years after they had signed the treaty. 20 years after they had agreed that after having a certain amount of human beings, they would be supplied with a certain level of technology, a certain advancement in weapons. And this was the idea. Except 20 years later, that treaty was broken. And as he said, there is a war going on underneath us. There are multiple different beings. And I wanted to touch on this briefly before moving on into the timeline. The idea that they are able to harness or at least harvest human genetic tissue human sperm, human ova, human eggs, legally and lawfully, is insane. What they're doing with it is the idea of making hybrids, of making humans, of making a race for themselves. What I want people to realize is that there is an active war that we are engaged in. So whenever we hear tales of people being abducted, tested, and probed, and us just kind of pushing that to the side, well, that's the same way that we're pushing gun control, etc., to the side right now. But what I wanted to get on with just this simple fact is that there is a war going on. There are hybrids walking around, and for the sake of the timeline, we need to move on. So roughly in the 80s period, around 1987, 1984, that's whenever we started hearing more and more tales from Bud Hopkins, Dr. David Jacobs, about the tales of abductees. That's whenever we start getting, and this goes up well into the 90s as well, into modern times as well, how we're hearing more and more tales of people being abducted, people being contacted, people who are in consistent communication with these aliens, with these otherworldly entities. But they never say what exactly they're here to do. And they're notorious liars whenever they do get asked. They don't like being asked questions. And the reasons why I have one of these pictures here, because this is actually drawn by an abductee, someone who is able to recall these memories. Think about how wild that is. Think about that, being able to see multiple people in the operating room, which you are in, being tested on by these foreign creatures, and they're harvesting your organs. What's even more wild, and Bud Hopkins, he mentions this in his book, witnessed with his case Linda, how she is shown her child, how she's not necessarily human, but she's not alien. She doesn't look entirely human, but she looks a little bit foreign. Something's off. And the idea behind this, if we were to fast forward, and I'll get into this later, is that we're walking now, that the hybrids have grown and they're migrated. Like I said, this is all taking place in the past, before I was even born. So if that's the case, these are fully grown, fully gestated hybrid creatures, hybrid aliens, human animal hybrids, whatever you would like to call them, and they're now walking around. So the physical concept that we have been consistently interacting with extraterrestrial beings, that can be thrown out the window. You don't need Roswell to be the concrete evidence and proof that we have been consistently in contact with extraterrestrial creatures, while there has been a simultaneous hybridization process. Whenever I am saying they are terraforming the Earth, I am saying that they are both physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, morally trying to gestate this planet, so that whenever they do come here, whenever they do make their quote-unquote arrival, they have the physical bodies. Because of how they've done the testing for so long, they will have the mindset for how long they have to be here, or what they have to do in order to act human. You can check the researchers such as David M. Jacobs, who have said that these people, the orders now, as far as the abductees, or at least the hybrids, is to move these people in, to migrate them, to have them act normal. Okay, the reality that these human alien hybrids are here on this planet, that's a reality. Okay, and if people think, why wouldn't they just take over? Well, my thoughts on that is they already have. Oh, well, won't our DNA and our germs kill them? Well, isn't that why they're doing all of the testing? You see what I'm saying? The point I'm trying to make with all this is that there is more to being just human than just going to a football game, than just having a beer. It's creating empathy, and they're learning this. This is a modern day migration tactic. This is what's happening in our universe, in our spatial time. So whenever I'm saying they're terraforming the Earth, that means that they have to get us ready. Okay? Our guards are down. We're distracted. Look at what we're focused on. Okay, we don't think about, we're fighting over the color of our skin. We're not trying to talk about enlightenment. We're not trying to talk about these things that advance us. We're looking for technology that alleviates simplifies our pain or simplifies or reduces the stress that we have to deal with, instead of us actually trying to enhance our condition or anything through spiritual means. We're trying to look through it through technological salvation. There's a British author named Nigel Kerner, and he goes into great detail about this, how he feels that the alien presence is here to sort of harvest our soul. And people have talked about this whenever they actually do look into these creatures' eyes, is that they feel as if there's a void, as if they're having their soul sucked, as if it's machine-like. There's no way that it's normal. And of course, it's alien. I can understand that, but there's so many different connotations to this that we have to pay attention to. So whenever I say things like they're trying to digitize our soul, or at least they're trying to terraform the earth, or they're trying to mimic what it means to be human, we can see evidence of this. And the reason why I keep bobbing back and forth in between what seems like the alien agenda and the New World Order agenda is because they're synonymous with one another. As you saw back in 1954, we've already signed a treaty. However, I think we got the short end of the stick. We're having more of us taken. At record numbers, children being taken, and it's not by that many people can't be abducted by the satanic Illuminati and used for their satanic rituals. Okay, we're living in the terms of sci-fi now. We have got evil oppressors. We've got robots coming. We have an extraterrestrial force engaging with us. We have people doing magical rituals on the daily, satanic rituals in front of us. Look at the Oscars, look at the Super Bowls, look at the Grammys, look at everything, the VMAs, look at what they do, you know. This is where we are. So whenever I'm saying stuff that sounds kind of crazy, like it's coming from my Tethered Verse series, the reason why I'm saying they're terraforming Earth is because they have to get everything ready. As they've said before in their own public documents with the Georgia Guidestones and all kinds of other things, they want to try to wipe out, up in Colorado, they want to try to wipe out at least 90% or 80% of the population to a controlled number. Is that not what an alien force would do? Would they not come down, try to terraform your planet, try to make you feel like, oh, well, you know, everything's hunky-dory. Yeah, we're going to need these guys that are coming here to essentially destroy us or replace us. The reason I have this article up here, where robots will eliminate 5 million jobs by 2020, is because we're seeing evidence of this agenda take place. We're being replaced. And if it's not by technological means, then it's by biological engineering means. That's what happens. That's why I'm saying they're terraforming us, is because we have an alien presence operating here with us right now. And you're probably thinking, oh, well, it's probably just Muslim terrorists or Iraqi or Afghani terrorists, or, you know, it's just some probably radical people that are upset with the way things are. Well, these are crazy statements for people that are rational thinking. Okay, and whenever we've given over our power to these people that clearly have alien interests and do not operate the same way we do, this is the result. We're seeing a hybrid kingdom being formed in front of us, between aliens, between our government, between the secret government, between all different kinds of factions here, and we're just walking around bickering about the race of one another and whether or not they're straight or gay, or if they have enough money, or if they have the latest phone to catch up on Kim Ye and what they're doing, or is Steph Curry's good. So of course we would get terraformed and conquered. But the problem, and the only thing we can really do about it, is saying enough is enough, breaking the matrix to say, hey, I will not be folly to your plan, remembering what it is to be human, because all these people that are doing all this out here, they don't have the compassion, which is where this alarm is coming from. They don't have the heart of what this is. And what I'm trying to tell you with all this information is that we're in a constant battle. We are engaged, and there is a war going on. We can either choose to sit back and act like nothing's here, or we can act like we're crazy and like we know everything, or we can get actively engaged and try to help people around us. So this is only one part of the Terraforming Earth series that I intend to do. And as I showed you, I just wanted to give you a quick breakdown as far as a timeline, how far back it goes, what all that means, and how long we have been actually interacting with what we can consider extraterrestrials, and how it's involved with our political, economic, and financial structure. I didn't want to go down the idea of David Icke talking about overshadowing, possessions, reptilians, etc., the Windsors, and how everything's corrupt, etc. I just wanted to show you, yes, we are interacting with aliens, or with Terrans, whatever you would like to call them. You see how strange it gets once you put the truth on it. We've been lied to. Our history, our archaeology is made up, and religion or history or mythology, however you want to look at it, our roots have been purposely misguided. But I don't want to rant anymore. I don't want to talk anymore. Like I said, this is only the first part of the Terraformed Earth series. If you guys have any questions, I'll have my email below so you can get a hold of me. As always, it's great hearing from you guys. Hit me up. You know, it's great talking to people. So if you have any questions, like I said, send me the email. Check out some of the other great things we have going on our page and on our YouTube. I'm always trying to put out great stuff for you guys, always researching stuff, and I'm always trying to improve my work. But that's enough of that. Stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Freedom Faction, out.